Hello everyone, this is my first video on a three-part series on Parliament. Now, you may notice I'm not using the green screen today. Very good reason for that. I'm wearing green. If you wear green and you use a green screen, it looks like you have no body. So I could have changed, or I could just do a video without a green screen, as the rest of my 47 videos are. Don't worry, the green screen will be back next time, and it's a good video next time as well. So today is the first video of a three-part series, and what I'm going to be doing in this three-part series is exploring Parliament a little bit deeper. So in the first part, I'm going to go about the theories of Parliament. So first of all, functions, features of Parliament, and a little bit of the history of Parliament. The second one is I'm going to go through each component of Parliament and how it works. So we're going to be talking about the chambers, how a bill becomes law, standing committee, stuff like that. And then the last one, I'm going to be talking about sort of the advanced parliamentary theory, parliamentary sovereignty, stuff like that. Don't worry, this is the only one that I'm actually not going to be using the green screen for. The other one, the green screen, is going to be alive and well. So, what is Parliament? Well, Parliament in Canada is actually composed of three separate entities: the Commons, the Senate, and the Crown. So you have the Commons, which are elected MPs, about 308 of them. You have the Senate, who are senators who are appointed, and you have the Queen, who the Governor General acts on behalf of, who sort of is the one constant in all. Parliament really has four main functions. The first is create laws. Parliament is the only body in Canada at the federal level that has the authority to create laws. You have bodies like the Supreme Court, which can interpret laws, but Parliament is the only body that can create it. Second role of Parliament, to hold the government account for the administration of the departments. So you'll see this especially during question period, where the oppositions are, in theory, holding the government account for their administrative actions in the different departments. Third theory, to tax. No one likes this part, but it is a definite function of Parliament, is to tax. We need taxation for various reasons, and it's Parliament that does it. And finally, a fourth theory is to, it's kind of in the other one, but the Parliament is also what we call the grand inquest of the nation. And this goes simply beyond the simple Parliament's role is to hold the government to account, to a greater thing, meaning Parliament's role is to inquire into very serious public policy issues and to make recommendations on the public's behalf. The grand inquest of the nation, you can even look at things like the tainted meat scandal, where Parliament held hearings similar to an inquiry into a public policy matter to see what can be done about a certain public policy matter. Parliamentary inquiries are different than other inquiries, what we call the Royal Commissions of Inquiry, because parliamentary inquiries can be initiated by the opposition as well as the government, and ultimately can bring the government down. So those are the four main functions of Parliament. And it's interesting because there's very good features of Parliament. If you read, as I do, Moreau and Montpetit, they give a number of different features of the Canadian parliamentary system, and I'm going to go through them, and they're actually very interesting, but they're basically the basics. So Parliament consists of the Crown, an upper chamber, and a lower chamber. Parliament is invested with legislature powers to become law. Legislation must be passed by each of the three constituent parts of Parliament. Members of Parliament are individually elected to represent their constituents within a single electoral district using the first past the post system. Most members of Parliament are supporters or belong to one political party. The leader of the party that has the support of the majority of the House of Commons is usually the person who is asked by the Governor General to become Prime Minister, and hence becomes Prime Minister and forms the government. The parties opposed to the government is called the opposition. The executive of the government are formally invested, the executive powers of government, are formally invested in the powers within the Crown, but effectively are exercised by the Prime Minister and Cabinet on behalf of the Crown. The Prime Minister is responsible and must answer to the House of Commons for any action which the Prime Minister or Cabinet takes. The Prime Minister and Cabinet, in order to remain the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, must at all times enjoy the confidence of the House. If the Prime Minister or the Cabinet loses the confidence of the House at any time, they must resign, plain and simply. And the last point is very important because contrast that to the American system. And especially look in the States right now, where you have the Obama administration battling with Congress over healthcare reform and several other things. This could go on for years. In Canada, this would go on for days until either Obama loses the confidence of the House, calls an election and there's a new House, or they call an election, there's a new government, or the leader of the opposition is called upon to form a government. So our system of government is much more simpler than their system of government when it comes to this. So where does this parliamentary system come from? Well, it comes from the Westminster model, which is a British parliamentary system. So let's trace a little bit of a history. I have about 4 minutes to trace the history. So Parliament comes from parler, to speak. And the British Parliament is sometimes called the mother of all parliaments, since most of the Westminster model is based after the British Parliament. So the first known meeting of Parliament was called the Whitbremote, which was called the Council of Wise Men from the 7th to the 11th century, and that's the beginning of the British parliamentary system. The Magna Carta secured the right of Parliament in the 11th century to tax. The Crown had to get the permission of the Parliament to tax. Edward I, had the model Parliament, which sets the foundations for the modern parliamentary system in 1295. Henry III was the first to elect members from the towns and shires to what later became the House of Commons. And during the Tudor Reformation, there was considerable change to the parliamentary system, and the authority of Parliament to legislate on matters of state was finally enforced. In essence, the beginning of the British parliamentary system did a shift from the king ruling to the king, lords, and commoners acting together in Parliament and ruling together. In Canada, we see a great history of parliamentary tradition. Under the 1763 Treaty of Paris, Quebec was governed, and remember, Quebec was much larger than the current province of Quebec and actually took in most of Ontario. Was governed by the Governor and Council, a group of locals who was appointed by the British monarch. When Quebec separated itself into Upper and Lower Canada, each province had the governor, and Legislative Assembly elected by the people, and an appointed Legislative Council. When the Canadas united again in 1841, you saw a uniting of the province of Canada into a single legislature. And it made in a variety of cities. From 1841 to 44, it made in Kingston, Ontario, where Kingston's hospital is. From 1844 to 49, it meant in Old Montreal, the old port. And then for a while, from 1849 to 1857, it alternated between Toronto and Quebec City. And then finally, in 1857, Ottawa was chosen to be the capital, and it was the capital ever since. The current parliamentary system in Canada, where you have the Senate, the House of Commons, and the Crown, was created in March of 1867 with the passage of the British North American Act, and was formally created on July 1st, 1867, with Confederation. The first time it met was to elect a speaker in November 6th, 1867, followed by the speech from the throne in November 7th, 1867. So that's a brief history of Parliament in Canada, its function. Next, I'm going to be talking about what exactly goes on in Parliament, how it works, and then finally, like I said, I'm going to go into a little bit of fun with the parliamentary system and goes into things that probably people haven't thought of before. Like I also said, green screen next time, I promise you. I know people like the green screen, it creates a better quality video. Anyway, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya later. Don't forget to check out my Facebook page and my updated YouTube page. And a website might be in the works. See ya!